Today on Cosmic Disclosure, we are with Ricardo Gonzalez, author and researcher from Peru who has experienced multiple direct contacts with extraterrestrial species called the Apunians. Today, we are talking about different types of contact. Ricardo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Emery.
You have had direct contact in the physical and 3D level with the Apunians. How did that work?
Yes, over the years I've had physical contact with these extraterrestrials with human appearance. And these experiences have also happened in the company of other witnesses. I'm not the only one who has found themselves face to face with these beings. However, the question is, how do these contact agreements work with an extraterrestrial entity? When I've had to share my testimony with the media, sometimes they've labeled me as being abducted by extraterrestrials. I would try to correct the journalist, saying, I was not taken against my will. It was a contact by mutual agreement. How does this work? They extend an invitation to those people who they feel would be appropriate for an experience. When I say people who are ready for an experience, I don't mean people who are more evolved than others. I mean people who can handle the experience and who would also be willing to talk about it. What would be the point of having an extraordinary contact experience if afterwards, due to fear, you keep it to yourself? So having contact depends a little more on them than on us. Obviously, having this type of relationship over time with extraterrestrials, some of us had to go through a training which took years for some of us. I had a training for almost 3 years in order to see one of these beings for the first time. This training consisted of meditation and concentration techniques, and also of education. I changed my paradigms, my perspectives about possible encounters with extraterrestrials. And at the final stage of this training, these beings suggested that we go to the mountains or deserts completely alone for several days, under all types of conditions, so that we could face our fears, our loneliness, so that we could hear ourselves. I went through all of that before I saw them for the first time.
What were some of the challenges, Ricardo, through those 3 years that you found were a little difficult to get through? If you could explain to our viewers.
I think, and I'm going to be very honest as always, Emery, what was the most difficult for me at first was to be alone in the desert for several days. Because we humans are not used to being alone. We are social beings. That's why the pandemic of 2020 affected us so much, like a negative emotional contagion, due to social distancing and the lockdown. We humans are social beings, Emery. So being in the middle of the desert 3, 5, 7 days alone was really hard. In the middle of nowhere with nothing around for miles. I began to feel great discomfort. Yet I didn't know why I was uncomfortable.
What other types of contact are there that you can share with us?
Aside from these physical encounters that I always describe in my interviews, for which I went through the training that I just described, there are other types of contacts and encounters with these beings. One of them that we discussed is the dimensional portals. Another is telepathic or mental communication. Another way of contact is through the dream world, where you can project your consciousness to other realms of reality, even though it sounds unbelievable. Many esoteric groups call this astral body projection. There are also contact experiences that are stimulated by sound, whether through mantras or power words, as was done in ancient India, or through music, just like what happened at the end of the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, by the way, is based on real events.
There are, of course, the three-dimensional contacts that you have, but there's also interdimensional contacts. Can you explain that?
Basically, there are 2 types of dimensional portals in contact experiences with extraterrestrials. The planet's natural ones, as we spoke about in another episode, and the artificial ones that these extraterrestrial beings can generate. Extraterrestrials refer to artificially generated vortexes as cendras, and there are 4 kinds of cendras. due to their physical and energy characteristics, and due to the experience itself within those vortexes. The first two Sendras, Type 1 and Type 2, are more physical. You can see energy with greater clarity, almost as if it was a bright, compact fog. And you can put your hand in it, and you no longer see it. And temperature and characteristics within that dimensional portal are different than the context where you were before. In the Type 1 experience, it tends to be individual. The energy is organized by the extraterrestrials for just one person. Type 2, up to 7 people may enter. And the next types, 3 and 4, which are called Himbra, a name that was coined by the extraterrestrials themselves. Large groups of people may enter, possibly more than 12 people, but the experience is more mental, more holographic, more spiritual. And the physical characteristics of the Sendra, Imbra together are also more subtle. They gave us a suggestion in training to face these dimensional portals, especially for Type 1 Sendras, because all of the energy was organized for you, adjusted to your physical body, adjusted to your brain, your mind. So you should enter there as balanced as possible, because the influence of that energy field is greater. So if they tell us, on such and such a day there's going to be a Type 1 Sendra contact on Mount Shasta, they would suggest a certain diet for 7 days, particularly a fruit and vegetable-based diet, no meat. They also would suggest avoiding alcohol, and of course, any substance that might generate an out-of-the-ordinary state of consciousness. They would say that our body had to be as pure as possible in order to withstand large energy fields. And the extraterrestrials were right. There were people who said, I'm not going to follow a diet for a week, and I'm not going to be fasting the day of the contact. And when they would face the experience, they would feel sick, they would get headaches, they would throw up, and they would fall asleep. The more energy field influence you have, the more prudent you should be about what you drink and eat.
There are very intelligent people out there that say they talk to extraterrestrials in their mind. Is that some sort of contact?
Of course, we're talking about telepathy, but if either of us goes to a psychiatrist right now, and we tell them that we are speaking mentally with an extraterrestrial entity, they would probably prescribe something for us. They might think that we're crazy. However, we do need to make a distinction between hallucinations and mental disorders and authentic contact experiences that occur within the context of telepathy. The word telepathy comes from Greek. In Greek, tele means far or distance, and path in Greek means something like a sensation or a symptom, or a disease or symptom. So telepathy could be described as transmitting something, a sensation, a sign, a symptom, over distance. It's not a language. It's not structured like English or Spanish. It's a collection of information, feelings, images, sensations. But if it comes to you, your brain will encode it in your native language, which is English. If I receive it, I will comprehend it in my native language, Spanish. That's why telepathy is the universal language of the cosmos. But there's an important point here. How can I confirm that telepathic contact? Because anyone can say, I'm receiving telepathic messages from extraterrestrials. Are they really receiving them? Anyone who says, I remember my past lives, are they really remembering that? If someone says, I'm channeling this information and this is my truth, are they really channeling it? How can you prove it? Because if we fall into that, if it resonates with you, it's true, that's a little dangerous, because it's all based on your faith and your perception. You may resonate with the charisma of that person, but not with the purity of the phenomena itself. What these extraterrestrials suggested to us is to have an element of verification. That proves that the telepathic communication was authentic. Within the types of contact, in order to confirm that these telepathic experiences are real, we would ask these beings for a physical sign. For example, I remember that in Peru, something extraordinary happened in 1999. I had only been receiving these telepathic messages from the extraterrestrials for a few years. I had had small but important confirmations, and I had even had direct contact with them. Then suddenly I started receiving a chain of really important messages full of information. This information would come to me telepathically. I would hear the information in my own language in my head, and I would write it down in a notebook so that I wouldn't lose the information. I said, they're going to have to confirm this. And they told me that in the first few months of 1999, there was going to be a wave of UFO sightings that was going to be filmed by a lot of TV networks, and that these objects were going to fly over the capital of Peru, over the city of Lima. And that's what happened. They appeared on the dates that they said, right in the middle of the city of Lima. They were filmed. And the Peruvian Air Force had to create an office for UFO investigations, which didn't exist before that. I was invited to the opening ceremony of that military office. So all telepathic contact at some point needs verification, physical proof, a concrete sign, or that their information may be verified correct over time. That will give you the confidence to continue that telepathic connection.